What's up, guys? Back for Underdog Fantasy Best Ball Draft number 9 of the summer. Chuck and Chris here. Been gone for a couple weeks. Was out of the country. I couldn't even open Underdog while I was gone, so I couldn't even sweat like my NBA playoff teams. I have not kept up with ADP, but luckily we have the Occupy Fantasy ADP tracker to just let me know the big changes in the past week. Good to have a refresh, like 2 weeks off, kind of get a better idea of what I'm trying to accomplish without running drafts every day. So we'll see what happens here. Chris, how we doing?
Chuck, it's awesome to have you back in the saddle for a show. We've definitely missed you in these parts, but happy to have you back here. And we're going to let you drive tonight and draft a team. Underdog, one of the best places that is out there for you to play fantasy sports contests. And while they are paying us to say that tonight, we actually also feel that way. We love playing all the different types of contests they have here on Underdog. It's not just Ball Mania V or any of the other NFL best ball contests for the 2024 season that we're playing. There are champions head-to-head, pick'em contests you can play, regular higher or lower slips, drafts for all of your other favorite sports, NBA playoffs, Major League Baseball, WNBA now, even something near and dear to my heart, UFL. There are a select few higher or lower options as we get closer to the weekend that they offer as well. So best ball is still kind of too early on the calendar for you all, but you're interested at least in kind of watching what we're doing here or looking at some of the other options, we would appreciate it if you guys would use promo code. I believe we have Occupy2 on the screen again tonight, Chuck. And since you have been away, maybe you don't know this, they changed their offer here for the month of May. It is a 50% deposit match up to $250. So that means you can deposit $500 and get a free $250 from Underdog, minimum $10 to get that 50% deposit match. Chuck, that's one of the best deposit matches I've ever seen in the industry, frankly.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just free money. Come in. I mean 10 free BBMs if you max it out. I mean that's almost getting like half the rake back, and then they're doing rake back this season for best ball anyway. So it just, like you said, Underdog is the absolute best place for fantasy sports right now. Let's talk about some of these ADPs, though.
Yeah.
So the big changes in the past week: Zay Jones, Jill McLaughlin, Dontavion Wicks, Deontay Foreman, Quentin Johnson are the top 5, and I've been seeing a lot of I don't know. Hype for Dontavion Wicks being like the X receiver in Green Bay. I've seen Jaleel McLaughlin get posted a few times. I've been very high on him. And then Zay Jones signing with Arizona. That makes a lot of sense. The team hasn't updated here yet. But do you have anything on these top guys?
No, this is a great tool. It's absolutely free on occupyfantasy.com, so you don't even need a subscription. We would obviously appreciate it if you had a subscription, but this is one of those things that you guys can check out on occupyfantasy.com all summer long, free ADP tracker. It'll compare current draft position to where these players were over a rolling kind of 7-day average. And you mentioned Dontae Foreman. I think a reason he has been slightly rising, it's still an 18th round pick, so it's kind of academic, is that there is a belief that Nick Chubb could miss up to half of the beginning of the season. So obviously there's going to be some value with not just Foreman there, but also Jerome Ford for Cleveland. And then obviously the other way you can sort this table is to see who's been falling. You can ignore the guys that have no ADP whatsoever anymore. Shout out Tom Brady being retired. But we have Michael Wilson. This is kind of the inverse of Zay Jones, a ancillary wide receiver for the Cardinals, probably most negatively impacted by that Zay Jones signing. So for me, Chuck, this is kind of the quickest way for me to get caught up on how the player field, if you will, feels about different players. Especially, I feel like that would be especially useful for someone like you who has been away from it for a couple of weeks and is just trying to get back into it and see where players are going.
Yeah, and I only see a couple guys I'm really interested that have dropped an ADP. Khalil Herbert. It's basically it. The rest of these guys, and like you said, they're all late round picks, so this doesn't really matter too much. But I'm going to go ahead and jump into a Best Ball Mania draft if anyone wants to join us. All right, All right, so if you wanted to join us, I'm sorry. We're gonna get started right away. Got the 7th pick.
Number 7 pick tonight. That's a good spot.
Yeah,
I like it.
Yeah, I have my new 49ers hat, so I was hoping we were gonna get the first pick. I have a couple backups, but I don't think we're gonna stack any of the teams that I have. So we'll see what we get.
I really liked getting while you were away for a couple of weeks. I did get a number one pick, I think, on stream here, and I did take McCaffrey. I actually really, I mean, obviously everyone loves having the number one pick, but I really like the way the board falls to you at that spot this year. I found it pretty easy to stack what I wanted, which ended up being like a Chicago Bears double stack, a Tampa Bay Buccaneers double stack. So definitely feels like it's a strong year to get the number one pick, Chuck.
Oh yeah, and especially I don't know, just the way like so I saw someone post that Christian McCaffrey is a clear number one RB. Who's number two? I don't think it's clear. You know, Bijan, Brees, Jameer Gibbs are probably the top candidates, but just I don't know, Christian McCaffrey, assuming he stays healthy, it's just, and then you get the first pick in the third round too. It just seems so much more powerful than any other position.
I think that's a fair way to look at it because it just, to me, it feels like the only one that I'm willing to invest the ADP costing in that range is McCaffrey. I think it's a little ambiguous with the rest of them. The Believe it or not, the running back that I think I like the most in that next tier is going to be Kyron Williams. I have him at the highest projected right now in my projections, which are available in the Discord for Occupy Fantasy subscribers. Because I'm not buying into there being much of a threat to his massive workload that he saw while healthy last season. But bottom line, you and I still big fans of going very, very wide receiver heavy for the first 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds, if you will. So I don't see much changing my opinion on that throughout the rest of the summer here.
And I have to agree with you on Kyron Williams. I think this is because he was going around pick 12, 13. I think this is a bit of an overreaction to Blake Corum. I mean,
Mhm.
Blake Corum was what, a third round pick in the NFL draft, which isn't bad in a weak running back class, but Kyron he seems like the only running back value I'm really interested in rounds 1 or 2. So looks like I'm probably going to take a running back here. I was hoping we were going to get Amon-Ra to fall to us, but
Okay.
Bijan or Brees Hall. Do you have a strong preference, one of these guys?
Brees. I
Yeah, I
think
think
year three, it feels like if we actually get healthy Aaron Rodgers this year, we actually have healthy Brees Hall to start the season. This just feels like probably the best. If you have to take one of these guys, he's my favorite one in this spot.
I think I agree. Yeah, no, I mean Bijan, Atlanta's going to be better than last year, hopefully, but
Mhm.
Brees Hall just he dominated in a bad offense. He should dominate again in a good offense.
Trying to take a peek here at what the market thinks about these teams because I'm also a little out of practice and I'm very into spring football, not fall football at the moment. But I would imagine that the market probably thinks the Falcons are going to have a better year than the Jets, but I might be a little out of school on that take there. Either way, I do think it's pretty clear that Brees Hall is going to have total ownership of that Jets backfield. And while Bijan probably should have total ownership of that Falcons backfield, we still have Tyler Algier to reckon with there.
And now with this start, I'm probably going to just try to go 3 straight receivers if I can. I'll see
Mhm.
if ADP's changed much over the past couple of weeks, but figure I'm probably going to get the guys I usually take in these ranges anyway.
All right, wins here. Let's take a look. Jets are their win total line is at 9.5. The Falcons are also at 9.5. So
Okay.
the market consensus right now is they're basically even. I'm looking at DraftKings Sportsbook for those particular totals at this point, but I'm sure that's roughly the same everywhere. That's obviously pricing in the quarterbacks, both Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, being, I would say, significant upgrades over what those two teams actually played for the majority of the 2023 season. Probably opportunities for us maybe to buy into each of those offenses in drafts throughout the rest of the year here. But obviously, the Jets is the choice we made tonight.
And I'm trying to get it up here, so because I wanted to see. I haven't drafted since the schedule came out, and so bye weeks
Mm-hmm.
and week 16,
Oh,
17
that's true.
stuff is all new to me. I've looked at it a little bit, but I didn't want to dive in too much. Like I said, I kind of just wanted to take a mental break before we really dove in for the summer. So I do have the bye weeks up here, and okay, and it is showing weeks 15, 16, and 17 over here. So the highlights in green are obviously just correlation with the guys that I already drafted. So we'll see what we can do with this.
So we have a really tasty Jets Bills game in Week 17. Chuck, I think that's probably something just to put on the back burner of your mind throughout the rest of this contest.
Definitely. And with this one, like, I mean, Kyron for the correlation, but I'm going to take either Devontae or Brandon Ayuk here. I'm trying to see if there's any kind of correlation I can mix in. So I'm going
You
to take
got that
Devontae.
49ers hat on.
Oh,
Let's go with Devontae. That's fine. Devontae is probably the better pick in this range. That's totally okay. I was trying to talk you into your 49ers. It was right there in front of you, but that's all right.
well, the reason I went with Devontae is because he has a Week 16 matchup with Jacksonville. Brees Hall has a Week 15 matchup with Jacksonville, and there's enough guys I think on the Jaguars who I can target later. I mean, Christian Kirk's number one. I think I came around on Brian Thomas. Wasn't too interested before, but I like him now. And then Trevor Lawrence is one of the best QB values in the whole draft, in my opinion. So see if we can stack that there. And I know you're very high on Travis Etienne too, but I'm not sure if I'm going to end up taking a second running back that early.
No, he ends up being like the first running back that I want to take sometimes in that third, fourth round spot. But, when you get CMC, Brees Hall, Bijan, even Jameer Gibbs, it's kind of hard to justify taking him based off of how we prefer to build rosters. Like this start for sure, which the Raiders had done a little bit more at quarterback in the offseason, but we've seen for a couple of years now, it doesn't really matter who they throw out there. They're still throwing the ball to Devontae, so we should be good there. And we can probably go for Brian's favorite wide receiver in NFL history, Rashid Shaheed, for some correlation as well, if we really wanted to.
As of now, I mean, Rashid Shaheed, he actually might be my highest drafted receiver post big board, and so I'm going to take him a bunch. I mean, we were on him last year, but I wasn't on him as much as I think I should have been. I don't know, compared to the guys around him, his spike week potential is just great. So we're definitely going to try to target him probably around pick 114.
So it looks like, I certainly don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but when the board comes back to you, I think you're looking roughly at like Malik Neighbors, Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith, Cooper Kupp. That's kind of the tier you're in for another wide receiver. You pretty locked in on taking one of those guys, or are you open to something else here? I don't know if he's still an option. I did mention the Buffalo Bills correlation with Brees Hall. I'm skeptical Allen's ADP is actually going to hold up at 33.9 there. But if it does, is that on the table for you here?
Absolutely. I think because the closer we get to August, I definitely expect these early running backs to move up a little bit as more casual drafters start drafting more. And the same goes for the elite quarterbacks. I mean, Josh Allen was going like pick 15, 16, 17 last year, wasn't he? And so we know that the quarterbacks don't matter as much, but I don't know. It might have just been a weird year for quarterback. Like a lot of the late quarterback data you're going to see was propped up by CJ Stroud just smashing. So,
and it's still very, very easy to pair pass catchers with Josh Allen. None of these guys have super high ADPs. The highest is going to be Dalton Kincaid, right around pick 50 in the fifth round. So, I'm not trying to coerce you into taking Josh Allen here, but just in general, I think I've talked about this in a couple of the shows. I love our ability to pretty easily stack with Josh Allen this season. It's just not quite the same as it's been in previous years where it was kind of tough to pair him with Diggs just because they both tend to have high ADPs, and with the recently departed Gabriel Davis, who's now with the Jaguars.
I'm probably going to take whoever's left of Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, and Sam Laporta. So, kind of obviously, we're hoping for Josh Allen now. Have a feeling it's going to be harder to stack him with Brees Hall later in the summer. And Stephon Diggs, I mean, I feel like Stephon Diggs is still a pretty good pick at this ADP. I mean, this feels like, I don't want to say his floor, but he seems like he has a pretty good chance to beat his ADP. But we're going to take Josh Allen. So not a typical start for me. I usually have at least two receivers through round three. So I'm probably going to forego elite tight end unless, I get a screaming value. I mean, Dalton Kincaid at 55 maybe, but 42, we're probably just going to take whichever receiver is best. I mean, I love Tank Dell at pick 42.
Again, this just comes down, like I do as well, but it comes down to I can't stop thinking about how Tank Dell, Diggs, Nico, I don't think all three of those guys are going to be able to have a season that justifies a top 40 ADP for all three of them. So there's a landmine in there somewhere, right? We don't know which one is going to be the landmine. That's just my concern there. And I kind of feel like Diggs might be the most likely to be that landmine just because we know from years and years and years of watching this league, as guys tend to get older, that's usually when they kind of are susceptible to these subpar performances. It's not like getting, an age 30 Mike Evans last year in the sixth round, right? This is you're getting
Mhm.
like an age 30 plus Stephon Diggs in the second, third round. Can he do it? Of course. It's just one of those things I'm thinking about because the entire team has that ADP right now.
So my problem with Nico, I don't know if you remember last season. I love Nico Collins in the 150 range, but he moved up to like 114, 103, and I just stopped drafting him, and that was a mistake because
Mhm.
he smashed. And so seeing him going this early in drafts, I'm just having a tough time. So he might be a player that I only take when he falls past, like when I get ADP value on him, and I'm okay being under the field on him if Nico Collins buries me this season. I think I can live with it. So we see three guys started with three straight receivers, and so it doesn't seem like it's going to be too tough if we hold off on running back till a little bit later. I don't know that we're going to be competing with that many people for like zero RBs, but I mean, like this guy Sam Laporta, this guy Lamar Jackson, they haven't taken running backs yet, so we'll see what they end up doing. Or
I'm just
Jalen
shocked
Hurd.
at. I guess since we've been on the subject, even though we've moved past it, and obviously I'll let you pick, so I'll talk for a little bit here. If you were ignoring ADP for a second, if you were going to handicap who's most likely to fail at cost in fantasy between Diggs, Collins, and Dell, it sounds like your gut is that it is Nico, is basically what you're saying here.
I think so. I just what are the chances Nico exceeds his ADP here? You know, if like like I don't know what his actual ADP was, but he got drafted at 14. If he finishes as like I don't know an ADP 11 value, like that's great. You're not disappointed at all. That's awesome, right? But what if Stephon
Mhm.
Diggs finishes at mid second round value, or Tank Dell just comes out and smashes and is the number one option, finishes mid third round value? It just seems like he has the best chance of passing the guys in front of him.
I think we can declare Dell was the clear wide receiver one while he was healthy over Nico last year. So introducing Diggs to the equation probably means as long as everybody's healthy, we're looking at Diggs and Dell, double D's, if you will, dominating the opportunities, provided everybody stays healthy there. And obviously, Nico probably becomes like the best wide receiver three in the entire league in this
Mhm.
offense. But yeah, that's probably fair. I think I could see that.
And then I want to consider the effect, like, because I mean, I thought Devin Singletary was awesome last season for what he was expected to do and what he actually ended up doing. But they did add Joe Mixon. They still have Dalton Schultz, who seems like one of the last tight end ones that I want to draft if I'm not totally punting tight end. I mean, does Joe Mixon affect the passing work much here compared to Devin Singletary?
And I think the other thing to consider there is he's still currently on the roster, but is Damian Pierce like is he cooked here? Like is he just not someone we should be considering at all? He doesn't really factor into our decision making. He's kind of a YOLO late round running back. Maybe he has a role if Mixon goes down with an injury or something like that. But just relative to you bringing up Mixon, like if they're both healthy, I mean Damian Pierce couldn't beat out Devin Singletary, and I feel like we both are kind of building up to we agree Joe Mixon is probably better than Devin Singletary. So without any real player at that position to push Mixon for opportunities, I absolutely think we should expect Mixon to probably outperform Singletary in this offense in 2024.
And so Dalton Kincaid came off the board. It's kind of a relief, though, because now I can just take one of the later receivers and draft a
Mhm.
receiver right now. I haven't updated my rankings. As you can see, I still have Rashi Rice in the 50 range.
I would strongly advise Keenan Allen over him right now for sure.
Oh,
Of course
yeah.
he goes. So the user before you definitely agreed with that.
Well, if I can
Is,
get a
is Christian Kirk still? No, he's probably gone, isn't he?
No, he got taken. I think I'm going to roll with Terry McLaurin. I really like Jaden
I
Reed.
like that picture.
but I want to mix in more Dontavion Wicks, Romeo Dubs, and I think I mentioned on the previous show. I think Christian Watson is a screaming value at ADP, assuming he hasn't risen too
Mhm.
much. So, and I mean Terry McLaurin is a guy who beats his ADP every year anyway, right?
I do think Terry is one of these guys that once you get down to this part of the draft board, once Keenan Allen comes off the board as he did for you, I think he's clearly got the best projection out of the guys remaining here. I'm personally a little more optimistic than the field on Brian Thomas from the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's the only receiver I have with a higher point per game fantasy projection than Terry down here, but I am
Okay.
definitely far away from the consensus. So Terry definitely looks like a buy down here. The other receiver that I can't stop clicking on, which is going to be a problem for my exposures, who goes basically 4 rounds later than this, who I think has a pretty similar projection to Terry, is actually Jacoby Myers with the
Yeah, man.
Raiders. And I know you've got a little bit of an incentive now to consider a Raiders double stack. Very easy to do that if you're also in on Myers, at least at his cost.
I'm super in on Myers. I can't believe he's going later than he was last year. He smashed, and it's if you look at the points per game, he exceeded ADP. But beyond that, looking at the spike weeks that he had multiple weeks in
Mhm.
regular PPR scoring where he was 20 plus, so half PPR. I mean, even if he had multiple weeks, 17, 18 half PPR points at this ADP, like that's just such a smash to me.
Yeah, you're getting a double digit round draft pick that is in your starting lineup in Best Ball Mania at least what, like 4 or 5 times most teams, I think, last year, if not more, depending on who else you had. Even if you went pretty heavy with wide receiver early, just because his cost is so low, that's an easy screaming buy in my opinion.
And especially, so we already have Devontae, but let's say we didn't drafting Jacoby and Rashid Shaheed back to back for that Week 17 correlate. I did that a bunch before the schedules came out, so that is a really nice thing to see have happen. Just getting that Week 17 correlation. Man, I was gonna say Romo Dunes or Jordan Addison, but is it?
As Addison goes, I mean, I know where my allegiance is in this range. It's Brian Thomas, but I'm not going to try
Yeah.
to sway you. So
Well, if it wasn't for the correlation, I'd just go with Romo Dunes here. But because we get Week 15 and 16 with two of our top picks, seems like Brian Thomas is a pretty good pick here. And I mentioned I
first
love
round, yep, first round
Trevor
pick in the
Lawrence.
NFL.
Hmm.
First round pick in the NFL here. You get him round pick 75, right? Actually, you're a little ahead of ADP here, but like I said, I think this ADP is potentially a little too low. So if we get some really strong, camp hype on Brian Thomas, or all it's going to take, we saw it last year with Tank Dell, is just like a good preseason game in August, and his cost is going to go up. So I'm buying as much Brian Thomas as I can right now.
And this is one thing I want to focus on a little bit more so than I did last year, is be a little bit more flexible in reaching for guys with ADP. Because one thing so with Spike Week, it shows you like your average ADP value for each player, and that's one thing that I just love getting. If I could get a round of value on a guy that I have a lot of, I don't know, it just feels good. But looking at it now, thinking about it now, I don't think it's that important. It definitely matters, but stuff like this correlation, I think, is going to matter more because let's say I even reach around for this guy. It's a little different up here, but if I'm reaching around back here, like I'm trading my 11th or my 10th round pick for a second 11 round pick, and that just isn't really going to matter when it comes down to it.
Obviously, we know opportunity is the biggest thing to consider in fantasy football. It just looking at ADPs right now, Chuck. Lad McConkey with the Chargers, second round pick, went about 10, 12 picks in the real NFL draft ahead or behind, excuse me, Brian Thomas, going 5 picks earlier than Brian Thomas right now on average. That to me is where I draw the line and say this feels a little wrong. I'm going to go with the first round pick.
So I started to look a little bit at like season long props, and I'm mostly going to be interested in unders. I think just the nature of football. Someone gets hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and as long as they play enough games, the bet will count. But Lad McConkey's season long prop, I might be mistaken, but I think it was like 775 yards, and that just to me is a screaming value to bet the
I
under.
kind of just probably gave away my poker face entirely for those of you watching the show here. Yeah, let's go with those unders, Chuck. I'm on the record on May 21st. Occupy Fantasy company wide policy unders on Lad McConkey. So check in around October 15th when he's already crushed that over through like 7 weeks of the season, and we will own up to that. But no,
Yeah.
you're 100% correct. It just another data point that kind of correlates with. I just think he's priced a little too high here. Maybe it's one of those things where obviously Chargers wide receiver room far less talented on paper than the Jaguars one. So like I get it, but I just don't buy it, if that makes sense.
We got, well, probably could have taken Keon Coleman, but very happy to get Chris Godwin at pick 79. I mean, you mentioned like Mike Evans was going in the 6th round last year, and now he's going,
Mm-hmm.
what, 3rd round? And Chris Godwin, I don't know if him moving back to the slot affects much, but either way, I already thought he was a value. And if
I,
he's in line for more targets, that seems great.
when obviously you did more big board than I, Chuck, but when this contest opened at the end of April, Keon Coleman, Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, kind of your main three Bills receivers as of right now, all were going right around pick 100. Keon Coleman has kind of seen a massive rise to here in the mid 70s, early 70s. Curtis Samuel has kind of stayed in the same spot. Khalil Shakir has gone down. I still think we have an opportunity to get a high upside receiver with Josh Allen missing on Keon Coleman here.
Yeah, and like kind of similar to, I mean, it's actually much different, but I like the wide receiver 3 on Buffalo, just like I like the wide receiver 3 on Houston. I mean, Khalil Shakir showed out last season. Keon Coleman, he's unknown. He could smash. Curtis Samuel, we know is pretty good, but I mean, I wish his
Oh yes, and
ADP
then
was a little lower.
my old friend, habit I cannot quit. I will admit to my addiction. MVS Marquez Valdez Scantling is now a free last round pick with the Buffalo Bills as well because he just signed with them. So that's another option.
He won someone a GPP last season, so can't forget that.
Oh boy. So are we 115 build here? I don't think there's like a tight end left that we're like itching to get. I think my favorite one left is the only one you can. Well, he's the second one you can see on the screen right now. I think I like Njoku the best out of what's still available, but I don't necessarily think you have to take one here if you don't want to.
I was gonna take Deontay if he fell to me. What range are you taking Rashi Rice in? I think I saw something about the
I'm,
club charges were going to be dropped. I don't know how that's going to affect his incoming suspension, but
I'm not. Maybe that's wrong, but I'm not interested at all right now.
mhm.
I guess if you have to make that decision, you're looking at a pretty severe gap now. We're kind of in the wide receiver dead zone. You see all the green, the blue, the purple on the screen. This is kind of where I think he goes because there's really no one else to take at wide receiver. But just looking at straight ADP, he's going pick 85 right now, and then I see like Jamison Williams pick 94. Curtis Samuel, who I talked about, Cortland Sutton, pick 100. So, like, the field is just not taking receivers in this portion of the draft, really. I'm sure if you went back to the board as a whole, Chuck, to show everybody on the show here, and as we watch the picks roll in, kind of in this round 8, 9, 10 range, I just feel like people are going to notice the board stops being very orange at this point of the draft.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, with not having to compete or probably having to compete with more zero RB guys. I mean, we kind of see like this guy's first 2 running backs. I guess Rashad White, Najee Harris. That's pretty good. Aaron Jones and 2 quarterbacks before a second running back. So, not to criticize Enwar here, but this is something I really kind of want to avoid this year. Hayden Winks, one of the Underdog guys, posted some really good information. And again, I think that a lot of it was propped up by CJ Stroud smashing last year. Not to
Mm-hmm.
say that a late quarterback can't smash this year, but there was a very negative correlation taking 2 early quarterbacks. And so that's something I'm really going to try to avoid. Even like round 7, round 8. This is probably not something that I'm going to end up doing much, but he did get the stack with Trey McBride, Kyler, and then Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, and DJ Moore. So, like, if I
Yeah,
was
so
going
I
to do it,
guess,
it would be
yeah,
like this.
this is probably one of the exceptions to try it, but I'm 100% with you. Feels like it's a little bit of an overkill right now. You got my guy, Tony Pollard, in the red zone once again here for us. Hopefully, he can score some more touchdowns this season. I'm going to be smashing him in the 8th, 9th round pretty much every single time. Glad to have you aboard the Pollard party bus here.
Yeah, and I took him. I was going to take Jalen Warren, but I do have the Week 17 correlation with Jacksonville, and so that was a tiebreaker for me there. I mean, I have full correlation with Jacksonville, and so I'll be tempted to take Trevor Lawrence, but again, like I have Josh Allen. His floor
Right.
is going to exceed not Trevor Lawrence's ceiling, but it's like if Trevor Lawrence is a ceiling, he might only outscore Josh Allen by two. And so I think I'm probably not going to end up taking him, but like if I didn't have Josh Allen, then I would definitely take Trevor Lawrence in this build.
So I'm not going to assume our viewers have watched all of our shows, have watched any best ball shows. I feel like we do have to state this here, so I'm going to pose the question to you. And I do see you're about to pick, so I will build up to it and talk about the subject a little bit more. When you have an elite quarterback like Josh Allen in a contest like this, or an elite tight end like Travis Kelce, let's say, do you absolutely feel like you have to take a second one? Or are there instances where you can just go with having one of those guys on your roster at quarterback or tight end? I want you to think about that as you lock in your pick here in round number 9, and we can discuss that afterwards.
So I went with Jalen Warren. Pretty happy to take him 12 picks past ADP. I think Najee Harris is still the workhorse. And for me, I view them not picking up his fifth year option as a good thing for Najee
Mm-hmm.
Harris and that they're willing to just run him into the ground. They won't care. But I mean, so far from what we've seen, Jalen Warren is the more efficient back. It could be kind of similar to like Tony Pollard, Ty J. Spears in Tennessee. But anyway, love Jalen Warren. But back to your question about these quarterbacks. Like, I do want to draft a second quarterback. There was something I was talking about last year. Like, if one of these last round picks adds 20 points to your season long total, that's pretty good. But like looking at how many teams I actually had that were within 20 points of advancing but didn't, it's really not significant at all. And so if I'm taking the second quarterback, a lot of times I'm considering spike weeks and the playoff weeks. And
Mm-hmm.
I have Josh Allen. I don't think it's
Right.
like it matters too much. And so maybe I'll get like a Baker Mayfield or I don't know if I mean I don't want Aaron Rodgers because I don't want the 2 week 17 quarterbacks together. But
You
yeah, I
just want
think
a body is basically what you're saying, not to denigrate any of these players, but where the thesis of this team is Josh Allen is the guy you need. So why invest more capital than you need to at a backup? So I totally understand what you're saying. Relative to the Najee Harris, Jalen Warren discussion, just because I did want to weigh in there, I do think Najee's still going to be your workhorse tailback on early downs, but uh, Jalen Warren doubled Najee in targets last year, doubled Najee in receptions, 61 receptions to 29 for Najee. Doubled him in receiving yardage. Neither of them had a receiving touchdown, which was kind of interesting. It just feels like in fantasy, with the passing game role being a little bit more valuable, even here in a half point format, you absolutely can have situations where Jalen Warren doesn't outtouch Najee Harris, but he might outscore him in fantasy. So them having relatively similar ADPs here in the 9th, 10th round, I think I'm going to have a hard time clicking on Najee this season, Chuck, for that reason.
and this guy took Khalil Shakur. So probably not going to get to stack Josh Allen, but like this is one quarterback, him and Lamar, that I don't. Well, Lamar you can add Devontae Walker easy at the end, but I am not
Think you still
too
have,
worried. So
yeah,
someone
I
else.
wouldn't be tremendously worried about it. I think, we missed the boat on Dalton Kincaid, but I think one of my favorite kind of backdoor outs to at least getting a little bit of correlation with Josh Allen is probably Dawson Knox at tight end at the end of a contest. Maybe you get a couple of, a 2 touchdown game in there, you get a little bit of a spike week from Dawson Knox, and you can benefit from that correlation, but, not a tremendous thing to really prioritize anyway.
Well, the way it's looking now, I'm probably going to end up taking 3 late tight ends. And so Dawson Knox is probably definitely going to be the easy target there. I mean, he's free, right? So we'll see who
Yeah,
else I end up
yeah.
taking with him. And I did go with Jacoby. I was debating Dubes, Romeo Dubes, but
Okay.
we talked about Jacoby, so I thought I'd just go with him. And the
Yeah.
difficult thing here is taking 2 Vegas players, but I mean, I'm okay taking. I can't even remember his name.
I mean,
Gardner
this is
Minshew.
another this is another reason for you to tout Gardner Minshew on the stream. So hey,
Uh,
I definitely get it. I have allowed myself to buy into Minshew mania once again, just because of how easy it is to get this Raiders stack, Chuck. So
yeah.
you've sold me. I don't have the most optimistic projection at the position, but I think Gardner Minshew is a perfect quarterback on teams where you get the elite quarterback that you're basically counting on anyway.
And I haven't found, maybe you found one in the past couple weeks. I haven't found any like late round guys I'm comfortable taking every time. Like we didn't get Kyron or Puka until kind of late in the offseason last year. But just taking a quarterback with my last pick, no one's going to take Gardner in this draft. I have both
I,
Vegas guys that matter. So
I'm kind of glad you brought the late round smash picks up because I think something I wanted to stress, not just on this show, but just in general, it's like there's no guarantee that we're going to get quote unquote the next Puka Nakua or the next Kyron Williams. Like it is absolutely absurd. It's hard to put into words what kind of an outlier performance both of those guys had at the same time in fantasy football relative to their closing ADPs. It doesn't tend to happen. Such a quick turnaround, and now they're both. Puka's a first round pick. Kyron at least was at one point, and arguably maybe even still could be. So I'm not sure. It's hard to plant the flag now and say we're even going to get a value like that. But that was a unicorn season, I would say, for best ball with those two players.
yeah, we could play best ball every year for the next 50 years and never have two guys finish that high again that were drafted
Yeah,
that late, right?
yeah. But there will be
So
values. There will be guys that beat their costs. That's absolutely true. 1360. You're obviously. It seems like you're hovering over some running back picks here. I like Elliott in this range. He's the one I tend to keep clicking on, but a player I want to talk myself into is Jerome Ford, just with the likelihood that Chubb isn't going to be ready to come back from that really gruesome knee injury for at least a few weeks. Maybe this is a player that is more valuable in the beginning of the season than late in the season, but when we have somewhat of a zero RB backfield, I think that is important to consider because we still got to get out of our pods.
And I did take Jerome Ford here. And I think I'm going to end up going with a 5 running back build. Like this is even like taking 4 running backs this early. This is a little, maybe if I didn't take Brees Hall, like I would have 4 guys if the first one was like drafted in the 80 range. But this is not
Mm-hmm.
typical for me. But I really like the way that this build is coming out right now.
And it seems like, we want to get ourselves in a position to be able to just hammer some options at tight end over the last 4 or 5 rounds, which we're getting pretty close to that point. So we didn't go there, but I just saw that he came off the board. How do you feel about TJ Hawkinson? I think he's another player that's going to probably not be ready until somewhat midway through the season. But as far as advancing a roster and having Hawkinson available in the playoff weeks, this feels like a great price because he was going significantly higher than this. Obviously, played a full season last year, so that's why last year. So that feels like a pretty good price down here to get his late season production anyway.
Maybe you can talk me into him more because even going back to big board, I'm like 120 drafts in. I haven't touched. I don't think I've taken him a single
Okay.
time.
Well, I think it's just a severe downgrade at the quarterback position, JJ McCarthy / Sam Darnold. So like, I get it. But if we're looking for home runs, right? If we're swinging for the fences, especially on teams where we don't have elite tight ends, I don't hate it, especially if we feel pretty good about the other positions that we have. I could probably, if I had a team like yours here in this spot, Chuck, I could talk myself into it, is basically what I'm saying.
Well, another guy, let me ask you about that I've seen get some hype on Twitter. Pat Fryermuth he went at pick 133 here, and I think I agree. Seems like a good value. Could smash, could not, but it's hard to think that he fails at this ADP too hard.
I have him TE 18 on the season, and he's basically, I think, being drafted in the correct range.
Okay.
We have pardon me, we now have Arthur Smith coaching the offense in Pittsburgh. So, maybe we need to be drafting Connor Hayward, backup players only, not starters. It's a joke, obviously. I'm okay with his cost here. I can't remember if I've talked about it with you directly or not, but I think the tight end I like the best here is the rookie on the Commanders, Ben Sinnott. I don't know if he's still on the board for you. Second round pick that they just took this past April. I think he's my favorite one in this range.
I need to update my rankings because I have him 50 behind where he probably should be. I agree with you. I'm okay taking that shot on him. What if he's Sam Laporta?
Yeah.
Josh Downs or Dontavion Wicks? Like the tiebreaker for me
go
would
with-
usually be Wicks 16, but I don't really care that much.
I think you said you were high on Wicks.
I tried
We
to
ended up
switch
with
it at the
Downs.
last second.
So
Yeah,
it's all good.
Yeah,
We can live with that. Downs was awesome with Minshew, your boy Minshew last year,
Mhm.
and hopefully with a healthy Anthony Richardson can take the next step in that offense this season.
Another guy I'm curious your opinion on, Xavier Leggett. I mean, we were pretty high on. I don't even remember his name anymore.
I think what it just comes down to for me, Chuck, is I'm not a believer in Bryce Young. It was
Mhm.
pretty painful last
Yeah,
season. So if you buy into regression back to just like average starting quarterback production for Bryce Young, then obviously we need to be interested in his new toy here in Xavier Leggett. But I don't think the market, or how do I want to say this? I think the market agrees with my read on it. I think we all are very underwhelmed by Bryce Young and this Panthers offense. So that's the biggest reason why Xavier Leggett is probably anchored to this part of the draft board, because I think if we just look at ADPs for the Panthers as a whole, they're all very, very low.
yeah. I'm not. I don't think this is a guy I've clicked on at all yet. So we'll see if that changes. I don't think it will
Like
though.
to your point on the Jaguars that we've been making tonight with Trevor Lawrence being undervalued. Obviously, we didn't get him, but Gabe Davis being right here, he just feels like one of those players I'll end up clicking on in this range for that reason. I agree with you that Jacksonville seems somewhat underpriced, especially a player of Gabe Davis's caliber for spike weeks. Seems like a pretty good pick in this range relative to Xavier Leggett, in my opinion.
I probably could have because the reason I picked and I would have taken Davis, but I already have Brian Thomas. But given that like the Week 17 wait, Jacksonville, I guess just with all the playoff correlation we have with Jacksonville, Gabe Davis is just he could be the nuts in the playoffs. I mean, going so late, he drops a 70-yard touchdown and then a couple more catches. It's could be very powerful.
Far too many zeros in fantasy at the end of the campaign last year with Buffalo. Biggest reason why I think people are abandoning ship on Gabe Davis. But that's exactly why we should be piling in, because we know the range of outcomes is massive there.
And especially on teams that went heavy on elite wide receivers early, like we don't care about getting the zeros in most of the weeks, right?
Right. Yeah, we're just looking for those weeks where he's going to crack our lineup, because most weeks he's not going to be counting for us anyway, especially with a talented wide receiver room like we have here.
And
So we're
so,
coming back around. You got a 1-4-7 build. What are you thinking?
well, I don't like anyone up here. So, I mean, I don't know what to do here.
um, Are you comfortable with 7 receivers? Is there another receiver that you want to potentially put on this team, or do we want to just maybe take shots at tight end?
I'd probably take one more receiver. Oh, wait. Oh, he took Ben Sano. I was going to take Ben Sano. You know
Yeah,
what?
that's who we were looking for. Oh well, Kate Otten should still be the number one tight end in the Buccaneers offense. Score some touchdowns, fall in the end zone, a couple times in 1 week, and there you go. You've got a starting tight end that's giving you 12 fantasy points. So we can absolutely get away with Kate Otten in this tight end room. I agree. You're probably going to need 3 on this team, because you're going to need a bunch of guys that have that potential. But they're all here. Hunter Henry with the Patriots, Tyler Conklin with the Jets, Michael Mayer, the darling of, I guess, last year's rookie tight end class. We have too many Raiders already. I understand that. But what do you think about Michael Mayer this season now with Brock Bowers going to Las Vegas? Is this a kind of a late round, last pick of the draft value, barely being drafted at this point?
I feel like I'd rather take every single other tight end
Yeah,
around his
that's the
range.
reason that's the reason why his ADP doesn't exist at all. So
Yeah.
Conklin probably highest floor.
Yeah.
They got your Jets correlation there in championship week. I think we've talked about Mike Gesicki with the Bengals. Probably an upgrade at quarterback for him with Joe Burrow and no real competition in his tight end room. We have incentive to take Dawson Knox here, so definitely options.
And I think I'm going to go for Jawan Johnson here since we missed out on Rashid Shaheed. He went a little before ADP. But
Mhm.
I mean, who else on New Orleans can we get that Week 17 correlation from? And it might not matter too much since we have the Josh Allen Jets correlation, but definitely want to have that in our back pocket just in case.
The player that we can't get that correlation with is Taysom Hill, because he's quarterback eligible. So if anybody has those questions, not someone that we're interested in. I haven't thought about this player much since last season ended, but I see A.T. Perry in the 18th round with the New Orleans Saints. We were playing him in DFS at the end of the season last year because he was thrust into a pretty big role. That might be, we're going with Juwan here, obviously, but that would be, I would say, another option here on the Saints if we really wanted to force the correlation. A.T. Perry at wide receiver.
I'd have to pull up the stats again, but someone posted something just showing the depth of target for all of these guys. Olave, A.T. Perry, and Rashid Shaheed, and all of them were just way higher than would be
Yeah.
expected, right? And so the question was, who's going to get those mid-range routes? And I don't know anything about A.T. Perry's game. I don't know if he has opportunity to maybe slide into the slot or something like that. But he's a guy I had not been drafting that I am interested in now.
Obviously, we get this nice little nugget that he scored twice in the final week of the season. So, ended the season on a strong note. Maybe that carries over into 2024 with Derek Carr. I'll put that on my list to do some homework and talk about the Saints on one of our future shows, Chuck, for sure. So now we have a couple of tight ends back to back, and I think you've freed yourself up to pretty much do whatever the hell you want here as we go through the final 4 rounds. But I think we've got a pretty fun-looking team here. This should be hopefully a sweat as we get into the winter months this year. Other than the sweats we're having here in the summer because of the weather.
Well, talk about sweats, dude. I was in the Philippines for 2 weeks, and it's like an oven, man. It's really unlike anything you've experienced if you've never been to like Southeast Asia. It's like we are very, very lucky to be in the U.S. right now, or Canada if you're watching from Canada. So I don't think anyone in this draft is probably watching this since it started right away, maybe. But I'd like to take, Jaleel McLaughlin got taken, and Khalil Herbert, the 2 guys that I wanted to round out my running back room with. So I had a plan.
I mean, just to kind of stay on the subject, I love a lot of the running backs going in this range. Antonio Gibson, who also went at that turn, is probably my favorite in that spot. We missed out on McLaughlin, but I think the Broncos are pretty low on Javonte Williams. So I think another option down here is that rookie draft pick, Audric Estime out of Notre Dame. Not tremendously familiar with his game with the Fighting Irish myself, but that's probably another option. Seems like you're interested in Chuba here with the Panthers. I don't think that's a terrible idea. So that's another kind of player down here. Eli Mitchell, if anything happens to CMC, would probably be kind of interesting if you're looking for another running back. So, those are kind of the guys in this range that I think are still draftable for sure.
So I have no idea what I want to do here. I know I'm taking Dawson Knox, and so I'll just queue him up in case I can't decide. Like Chuba Hubbard, I prefer on 0 RB teams because I think he's going to start at the beginning of the season, but he's going to lose that. He's just going to lose his work by the end to Jonathan Brooks. So this tight end room is complete, and like with the reaching stuff, like I said, like this is not something I typically do, but being on the clock for the first time in a couple weeks, kind of tough to make quick decisions. But I feel like I want one more running back, one more receiver, and then I'll round out the build with Gardner Minshew.
Kind of right. Looking at whatever you do here is somewhat relatively interchangeable no matter what the ADP is. So I definitely can see that. I was high on him last year. I don't know how I know how I feel. I'm kind of out on Rashawn Johnson now with DeAndre Swift in that backfield for the Bears, but no real like tremendously high investment here either, if that's a target I guess people have late in drafts. Tyler Boyd down here at pick 205 with the Tennessee Titans. I feel like I'm going to click on that a lot. Clicked on him a lot last year. He's basically free. That's a decent pick down here. Wan'Dale Robinson, the Patriots wide receivers, all of them basically. Those are the guys I like down here.
So I passed up on Demario Douglas, and he's a guy I'd been taking a lot, but I don't know if he has a ceiling. I feel like he has the floor, but I don't think I need floor on this team.
No.
And so I'd rather take shots on Kendrick Bourne returning to his all-pro form to start last season.
He was awesome at the beginning of the season last year. Devontae Walker, I think, one of those situations where a quarterback asks his team to go out and get this guy. Apparently, Lamar Jackson really, really wanted a big-bodied outside wide receiver target. So that's kind of an interesting ceiling play, if you will, in this range of the draft with the Baltimore Ravens at wide receiver. I think Wan'Dale with the New York Giants is interesting down here. Like there's definitely plays that are still here. Zay Jones is down here, right? So we started the show talking about him joining the Arizona Cardinals. So, for a final wide receiver, you are definitely not lacking opportunities here.
You mentioned MVS at the beginning of the show, but what do you think about Mac Hollins?
I haven't thought much about Mac Hollins, but they signed him first, right? So he
Mhm.
joined the team before the draft. So I think the Bills are telling us they prefer him, right?
Mhm.
For sure. So probably the fourth wide receiver behind those other guys. That's the only thing they consider.
I think I'm going to go ahead and just take Chuba here. I mean, we're getting a round of ADP value. It doesn't matter too much. But the only other people I'd want to take, I guess, like I'm okay taking a Stime since I have a bunch of McLaughlin. So even that out just in case I'm wrong. And then Evan Hull is a guy who I want to tack on some, but I don't want it to turn into a Kyron situation where I just have 25% of him and we have no idea what's going to happen. Kenneth Gainwell, another guy down here too, that is not getting that much love, and I think he seems like one of the better handcuffs in this range anyway. Like he wasn't great last season, but I don't think he was bad.
I like him still. I think this might be an overreaction to Will Shipley, the rookie that they drafted, who I want to click on down here as well. People like shiny new toys, right? But we know what Kenneth Gainwell is capable of. And I think when I was talking about Jalen Warren earlier, excuse me, same applies to Kenneth Gainwell. We know he's going to have a role in the passing game, and that is the easiest way for him to start racking up some fantasy points in our lineup and potentially crack one of those running back spots if we need it at some point throughout the season. Plus, if anything happens to Saquon, I think he's probably a candidate to see a dramatic increase in opportunities.
Especially if the tush push is not going to be as effective as it was before, but we'll see on that.
It's going to be effective. Let's just accept it now. Jalen Hurts is going to be an absurd fantasy producer again for the third season in a row, and we're just going to have to accept it. Favorite quarterback in this range? Are we going with our boy Gardner Minshew? Or are you looking at anybody else?
I mean, Derek Carr seems like the better click than Gardner Minshew if they're both available, right? But having
Definitely
two
agree.
LV guys, like we only have Jawan Johnson. I'm still going to go with Gardner Minshew here, but it just like this is definitely a consideration. I mean, I haven't done my ranks in a couple weeks, but I had 8 guys ahead of Gardner Minshew. Like this is the last draftable quarterback in my opinion. So
God bless America, man. People still drafting Tom Brady. It's been over a year now. Give it up. Come on. He's not coming back.
no,
Yeah.
no. Imagine though. Imagine.
What if he like what if something happened to Brock Purdy in like November, December, and they just gave him a call? Wouldn't that be crazy?
It'd be so fun. I wouldn't even care about any
Yeah.
fantasy implications at that
Yeah.
point. I'd just be rooting for him.
Yeah. It'd be awesome. It's not happening, but it'd be cool. All right. Couple of picks here to round out the show. I think we can start going through some of the stuff that we need to hit on before we get out of here. Talked about it at the beginning, but I will reiterate it here for those of you who have watched the stream. We appreciate you guys being here. We do have a promo code for you to sign up on Underdog Fantasy on the screen here, Occupy 2. For the month of May, Underdog is running a 50% deposit match promo up to $250. So that means you could deposit $500 if you're a first-time user, get a $250 additional match. There's a minimum $10 deposit required to get that 50% match. One of the best deposit match offers I've ever seen in the fantasy sports space. So definitely worth considering before we get on to the month of June if you're not yet playing any type of fantasy contests. On Underdog, this is probably going to be one of the better offers you're ever going to see in your lifetime. Looking at Mac Hollins here, we have probably, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's probably the lamest Josh Allen double stack we've ever built in our lives, Mac Hollins and Dawson Knox. But if you're going to go for some correlation, definitely is okay to go for it with a elite quarterback like Josh Allen here. Because how often are these draft picks in the 17th, 18th round talked about the unicorn status of Kyron Williams and Puka last year? Those players probably don't exist, right? So we can take some correlation shots here late instead of just taking random picks in general.
You like MVS more, right?
I do, but I'm biased. I know what I've seen in the past. I think spike week potential there. Runs a high A dot route tree, basically goal balls. Josh Allen humming it downfield. MVS is going to give you a lot of zeros. He's not going to have a ton of volume, but he's the type of guy where he might give you the old 2 receptions, 114 yards, 2 touchdowns, right? And we like that in fantasy. So
Yeah. So I did go with MVS since I'm on the show with you. I'm pretty indifferent between them because no one knows what's going to happen, right?
yeah,
But I'm okay taking either one of them. Like you said, this is we have the stack for Buffalo: Josh Allen, MVS, and Dawson Knox with the Brees Hall run back in Week 17. So
Buddy, if we are in the finals with this team in week 17 and Brees Hall runs for 2 touchdowns, Josh Allen throws 4 touchdown passes, and they go to, 2 to Dawson Knox, 2 to MVS, you are bringing home 1.5 mil, my friend.
it's going to be hilarious. So one of my favorite things with Spike Week too during the streams, like to me, Week 15, 16, 17 being on the screen is the most valuable thing for me because I don't want to have to refer to the chart. But I have 4 games with Week 17 correlation. We're going to add Gardner Minshew here, but I mean, these are not exactly the 4 games I would have been targeting. I love this first game, and the rest of these are just kind of whatever. But if one of them does well and we're in the finals with this team, it should be lower owned than like whoever Detroit's playing or Kansas City.
We are going to have to talk more about the week 17 matchups. I think we'll save that for a future show together, Chuck, where we can dive into everything. But we are kicking off the week 17 slate this year on Christmas Day with a doubleheader on that Wednesday afternoon on Netflix between the Chiefs and Steelers and the Ravens and the Texans. There will be a Thursday night football game. There will be the regular Sunday slate, and then there will be a Monday night football game. So this is going to be a very interesting week-long week 17 sweat. So I sincerely hope we have options to sweat that when we get there.
Like you said, we'll get into it more later. But just thinking about like that sounds like an awesome Week 17 game to target Baltimore Houston, but they're going to be on probably 3 days rest, right? The game's on a Wednesday.
Game is on a Wednesday. Let's look at the week 16 schedule. That is a dynamic we definitely need to consider. They've bumped. Looks like the NFL was smart, and they put all 4 of those teams, on Saturday. So 4 days rest.
All right, still not ideal,
right.
but
yeah, still not ideal, but kind of a normal Sunday to Thursday week schedule, if you will, for NFL teams.
And so it looks like we are going to have that decision point I mentioned earlier, where Derek Carr is still available, but I'm going to take Gardner Minshew, I think.
I think just because you have his clear top 2 weapons, it makes sense to go for that correlation here. So I'm on board with that.
Yeah, can't wait to open up the Occupy model week 1. Gardner Minshew is going to be number 1 on the list.
Dude, Moose is always very high on Gardner Minshew stacks. So I hope, for your sake, maybe for our sake, I'll have to start taking my own fair share of him. We'll have pretty high Gardner Minshew rankings all year long we can benefit from. Chuck, this has been great. It's been awesome to have you back in the saddle. Thanks for joining me this evening. We're going to be back with another show tomorrow. Not entirely sure who the hosts are going to be yet or the time. So keep an eye on the Occupy Fantasy Discord. We will announce that show once it is scheduled. And I believe we'll be doing a show on Thursday as well. Brian and I will be drafting on Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock. So that'll be scheduled on the channel as well. Chuck, this has been awesome. If there's anything you want to share with the people, do so and then take us home.
No, just thanks for joining me. Help talk me through some of the stuff I need to be aware from the last couple of weeks. Always love doing shows with you. Very knowledgeable co-host to bounce ideas off of. So we'll see who's on tomorrow, like Chris said, and appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll see you next time.